All right, welcome ICS3C folks. Welcome to Unit 2 finally. We're not, I'd like to say we're not doing HTML anymore, but we are really, sort of, really sort of. But it is Unit 2 on CSS. So the idea is you've got a word processing document open. You could use Smart Notebook if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Um, and I'm going to walk you through what I think is a pretty big lesson on CSS, the first Code Academy track of CSS, and this goes along with that. So hopefully you're ready to receive this. Strap yourself in. It might be a bit of a long haul. Remember that if I'm going too fast, talking too fast, you want to add something to your note or change the fonts or whatever, and I'm talking too fast, just pause the video. You have that ability, okay? So go ahead and do that. So here we go. Remember, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Certainly, the style part of CSS we understand already. The cascading and the sheets part, not so much. The style, yeah, okay, it's the style comments of HTML. Cascading, no. Sheets, today. CSS gives a web page its look and feel. It gives it its style, where HTML gives a web page its structure and content. HTML is like where all the meat and potatoes happen, and CSS is like the icing. It's the dessert. It's the prettiness. But it really adds a lot of flair, and it's pretty fun to do. So we're going to spend a little while, week and a half, 2 weeks on CSS. We have already been working with inline CSS when we use commands such as that. Remember that style equals quote and then had a declaration in there where there was a property and a value, and this would make the text hello world red. It applied, this style applied to whatever tags that we had. This was CSS, and we talked about that already. And so these this sort of thing here, I'm hoping won't be new. It won't be tough at all. Um, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. Um, what we're talking about now is applying CSS to an entire web page, not little bits of code at a time, not little bits of um, of of words at a time, but to an entire web page. And there's two ways to do this. One is in a style section. There's a separate section in your HTML, and it looks like that. So just like we have the head tags or the body tags or the table tags, we could have style tags. And then inside, and this is kind of a new look, is this sort of thing where we have an HTML element, P for paragraph or point, these curly brackets, and then the property and their values inside these curly brackets. Um, Remember, these tags, that's HTML. The stuff inside is CSS, and that's where we're going to focus our attention on is this inside stuff. So this is one way to do it, is in an HTML. Now, you don't have to write down this part, but I have a document here where I've got some style tags, and inside is some HTML, or sorry, some CSS. This stuff in here is CSS. So this would take the place of things like, well, not in body, but H1. This would be the same thing as having this command, and you're not writing this, by the way. This is going to be the exact same code. Remember that this color is actually got is in hexadecimal. Right? Separate CSS declarations with semicolons. And remember, there were a whole bunch of different properties that we learned, and there are more than we even learned that we'll see in this chapter and that we'll learn in the future. So there's lots and lots and lots of them. And this now, because it's in H1, is the same as this code. So this is the same code twice now. this stuff here that I wrote is what we're used to. This is new. And these style tags now will apply to the entire website, not just this H1, but all H1s. Okay. So for instance, if I were to change this up a little bit, and why not? I can do that. Make this blue. Sorry, color blue. And again, you're not typing this. Where if I had down here a different H1, call it, this is heading 2. What's going to happen here? Well, this style applies to all of them. This style applies to this one. So if I were to save this and run it in Chrome, hopefully I don't get an error. It's a little bit laggy for some reason. What's going on? I don't know. I wonder if my computer's doing an update or something. There it is. So this is a heading, was blue. This is a heading 2, had the color that I assigned in the overall web page. This style applies to the overall web page. And so that's going to be handy. Now what's funny is we don't do it that way very often. We don't do it this way with the style comments very often. We do it like we do it in the Code Academy, which is a separate CSS file. And now you're typing again. Now you're making your note again. This is more common in what is used in the Code Academy lessons, is the separate CSS file. In the HTML, usually in the head of the HTML document, we have this line. This line is super important, and it appears just like this. This stuff right here and right here has to appear exactly like this. That must be like that. Then the href refers to a file that we'll type out. We pick the file name, we write the file. And I'll show you that in just a second. But this line, this link, has to be in our HTML in order to use the CSS in another file. In Code Academy, it's just a tab you click on. And I'll show you that in Notepad, it's quite similar to this as well. So for instance, in Notepad, I had this one that had the inline style. I'm going to close that one. But in this other web page, which is exactly the same thing, notice I don't have any style section in here, but I do have that line, that link line. And in that link line, I've got the 2 first parts exactly as they appear. Then the href is the name of a style sheet that I've created, restyle1.css. And then this is in a whole separate file. In Notepad, all I have to do is save it as a CSS or as a .css. This could be in Notepad if you're still using normal Notepad. And I can see that they have the exact same declarations that I had before, maybe with a couple extra ones thrown in there for what I'm going to be talking about later. You see the difference here. All the style stuff has been taken out, put into this file, and put in a separate file. And so the 2 of them work together now. HTML, CSS. Okay? One thing I wanted to mention back in the note here, this link, notice it doesn't have a closing tag. Well, kind of it has a closing tag, but it's what's called a self-closing tag, where it has a slash and then end tag symbol there. And we had one other one that was like that in HTML so far. Do you remember which one it was? Yeah, the image. The image, IMG, was a self-closing one. So we had start, IMG, blah, 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 a whole bunch of stuff, and this slash end tag there. And that was the other one that was just like the self-closing tag. And here's some more notes that I mentioned in talking, but you can copy these into your notes now. In style, file name.css must appear in the same directory as your HTML file. So back in Notepad, and I'll come back to this, don't worry. These 2 files have to be in the same directory. Okay, these 2 files are in the same directory. Otherwise, I would have to put the entire file path in there, okay? And the entire file path uh, would have to be correct. But if they're in the same directory, they know what's going on. All right, back to the note. Must appear in the same directory. We had the same thing when we talked about images. In style file name, and again, this is just a file name that we picked. We chose that. Then we would have these. This is CSS. These are CSS declarations, and this is what it looks like. Notice how similar it is to the stuff that was inside those quotes. Okay? Okay, good. Finish off this part of the note. I'm going to pick up part 2 of the note in just a moment, and you'll probably wondering, this sounds a lot more complicated than just using the inline ones with the style and the quotes. Why the heck would we want a different file or a different section to do the styling? And that's an important question that we'll answer in part 2.